Welcome to Connections. I'm your host, April Healy, and I'm sitting here with my good friend, Derek Ermatinger, who is also a first-year Revival Group pastor. Hey, Derek, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're with us. How are you?
Doing really good. Really
Good.
good.
So I heard you've had an amazing testimony of falling in love with Jesus. Can you expand and tell us all about it?
Yeah, I grew up Christian and went to church my whole life, was always kind of the goody two-shoe of my friend groups, but I never really knew that God was still moving in power in our lives.
Yeah.
And so when I was 19, I ran to a friend from college, and he started telling me all these testimonies about praying for homeless people and seeing miracles happen. And it sounded, just like stories I had heard in the book of Acts, but it just, for some reason, seemed too good to be true. I told him, I'd have to really see it to believe it. So a couple months later, I run into him again when I was at a really low spot in my life. And I was, going through a lot of difficult things, and I was really sick at the time.
Okay.
So,
physically.
yeah, physically, I was very, very sick. And when he ran into me, he wanted to pray for me. And so he prayed for me, and first time, nothing. But then the second time, prayed for me, and all the sickness in my body left. I physically felt 100% better.
Wow.
And it just blew my mind.
Wow.
I had no clue that God felt that real and that he cared that much about me.
Yeah.
And so that kind of set me on this whole journey into really discovering, like, who is this God that loves me that much? Like, I knew who he was. I knew it was Jesus, but obviously I didn't know him well enough that he would do that for me. And as I just started to grow closer and closer to him and crying out for more of him, I just felt head over heels in love with him. And that's really what led me down, this path of moving down here from Michigan 9 years ago to do Bethel Atlanta School of Supernatural Ministry. And, eventually that led me into, where I'm at now, and, just recently married.
Nice.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
September 2018. Yep.
Yep.
And so I think, following Jesus and just falling in love with him, obviously one of the best decisions in my life.
Wow. Wow. So you're super passionate about getting people healed and whole, just like you got healed and whole, and giving them freedom in their life. And so can you expand on how you got that passion? Was it because you got healed yourself, or?
Yeah.
And just like what the Lord's doing in that way for you?
Once I figured out that God was so real that he could heal me, I started crying out. It's like, God, I want you in my life. And it felt weird for me at first to say that because I had grown up Christian my whole life.
Yeah.
But I just kept crying out, like, God, I want you in my life more than anything in this world. And he continued to show up time after time.
Wow.
There was one time I went to a Bible study, and there were some people praying for a person who had a severe back injury. And this is just a couple days after I had been healed for the first time. And so I didn't really have any experience seeing any of this, and still wasn't really used to it. But after we got done praying for this guy, he bent over, touched his hands to the ground and was completely healed. And he threw away his medicine that night.
Oh my gosh.
And it blew my mind once again. And that whole night, I just kept processing over and over, like, God, what are you doing? Like, what are you saying? And I just kept seeing this picture of me and Jesus walking on the beach, holding hands. And it spoke so much to me because, one of my love languages is physical touch. And so to see a picture of me and Jesus being that intimate and that he wanted that with me, just wrecked my heart. And I would, continually seek him, and I kept seeing miracles in places. Eventually I helped start like a youth group for the unwanted kids of the city that I lived in. And there was lots of, it was during the winter time, and this is obviously Michigan, so it's really harsh, cold winters. But lots of kids were coming in with the flu, and for months and months we would pray for them, but we didn't see any healing until one day when I was praying for a young guy who had injured his knee, and after the first prayer, nothing happened. But after that, I asked God, like, why not heal him?
Yeah.
And he said, there's a girl in the room with blonde hair who has a healing angel. And so I went and I found this girl that I found just my friend who had blonde hair. I was like, well, maybe this is her. And so we went and we prayed for him some more. And after a couple more prayers, his knee was totally healed. He used to have a big old gash down the knee. And afterwards, it was just pink skin.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's amazing.
And later that night, I remember asking God, like, this is so incredible because you are just healing people and changing lives. And I kind of felt like undeserving of it.
Yeah.
And when I asked God, like, why are you doing this? He said, I just want to be close to you.
Oh,
and I immediately blushed.
Yeah.
And it, ever since then, it's just been, seeking after the intimacy and growing closer to him and kind of letting the miracles happen along the way. But being intentional to, step past that barrier of fear to still go pray for people, even when sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So, what does it look like for you to be intimate with Jesus?
It looks like having a heart-to-heart connection. One of my favorite things to do is wake up a little bit earlier and just spend time with God in the morning. It doesn't have to be reading the Bible. It doesn't have to be really doing anything, just kind of hearing his voice.
Yeah.
It's usually just that still small voice and connecting with him and hearing him say, like, I love you, I'm proud of you. And knowing, the connection that we have is the most valuable thing that I have.
Wow. That's so awesome. Can you tell us another testimony that you have hidden in your heart that Jesus has done for you or someone else in your life?
Gosh, there's so many, hard to pick one. But one of my favorites is when it was my first year of school ministry. I was in the Encounters elective that you were teaching.
Whoop, whoop. That you teach with me now.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I loved it. But when I first went into that class, I didn't really know exactly what to expect. And on the second night, I remember having this encounter with Jesus where he brought me back to a painful memory where I was sitting in the car dropping off someone who was really close to me, and she turned to me and said, "You're not very fun or interesting." And it really broke my heart. But so in this encounter, I'm watching this play out kind of in third person, and I knew what was about to happen. And right before it happened, Jesus jumped in the middle and said, "No, you're fun, you're interesting, and you're wonderful." And then he reached over to my chest and pulled out this little silver needle.
Wow.
And it felt like warmth just all over my chest and the physical too, even. Because I was very aware that this was an encounter and kind of all playing out in my, the eyes of my heart.
Yeah.
But it felt very real too in that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just felt so wonderful to get that healing and get that truth in my heart in a place that I didn't even realize needed it.
Wow. So how do you feel different from that encounter? I mean.
Yeah, it's a truth. It's a cornerstone in my life. Anytime that, the world around me might be trying to say something, or, my circumstances or even myself might think that I'm not, a super fun or interesting guy because I'm pretty laid back a lot of times. Sure. Like I have that truth that, no, I'm wonderful.
Yeah.
And when I'm not feeling wonderful, I tell myself that and remind myself of that's what God says about me. And I tell myself until I feel it.
Right. Oh, that's so great. I love that. So what about if people are wanting to go after healing in their body, or going after healing, wanting to see other people healed? How would you give them advice practically on how to go after that?
You won't know if it's real unless you take the risk. And I would say, we all feel the fear of what if God doesn't show up?
Yeah. When
we feel that tug in our heart to go pray for somebody. But stepping over that is the best thing that we can do. And being okay with it, being messy. Being okay with, it might be awkward at first a couple times. But the more you do it, the better you'll get at just kind of being yourself. And, it's okay if nothing happens, and you never know, like something incredible might happen and you might end up changing someone's life.
Yeah. Somebody might get radically healed right in front of your eyes.
Yep.
That would be awesome.
It's so much fun when it does happen. And,
yeah.
It's addicting.
Right. I can't believe this just happened. Yeah. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Well, Derek, thanks so much for joining us. I loved having you on the show. I love hearing all your healing
You're welcome.
stories and testimonies, and they're definitely something that are inspiring to so many people. And so thanks so much. You're awesome.
Thanks, April.
And you guys, thanks so much for joining us too. I loved hearing all about Derek and his testimonies on healing, and I know you did too. And if you want to hear more, join us next time.